Let me start by asking this. Who are you? Let's say I'm meeting you for the first time. I say, who are you? After you say your name, what else would you say about who you are? Think about it. So if somebody come to you and say, hey, who are you? After you say your name, I'm John, I'm Susan, then what else would you say who you are? Think about it. It's actually a big and complex question that could reveal a lot about what you think about yourself. One thing I can say for now, though, is that we are living in this age where that is so obsessed with self. There's a guy who's actually he's American, Canadian, and Australian philosopher somehow. Wikipedia named him American, Canadian, and Australian philosopher named Michael Allen Fox. He says this about our age today. We live in an age of self-obsession. Everywhere we look, we encounter a preoccupation with self-interest, self-development, self-image, self-satisfaction, self-love, self-expression, self-confidence, self-help, self-acceptance, and the list goes on. And I'm sure some of that relates to us. We're interested in what? In self-development, in self-help, some of us in self-image, more so than others, in self-satisfaction. Why, when you ask people, why do you do that? Well, it gives me satisfaction. That's why I did that. Why do you exercise? Well, I want to have a good image. I want to get good body and that kind of idea. So Michael Fox is saying that we live in this age where we are full of, we're obsessed with self. And in our attempt to answer this question of who you are in regards to identity, we want to be looking at what defines identity tonight. It's a big and complex question. So if you haven't think about this, hopefully by the end of tonight, I will take you on a journey to sort of reflect on this and think about this, of who you are, who am I? Okay? So Tim Keller says this. A lot of this coming from Tim Keller and a guy named, who's escaped my mind now, I'll tell you later. But Tim Keller says this. Every culture, we're living in a culture, regardless of time, right? At this point of time, we live in a culture. 100 years ago, they live in a culture. Our grandparents live in a culture. Our great-grandparents live in a culture. So we're living in a culture. And Tim Keller says this. Every culture, without asking permission, imposes on us the identity formation process. What he's saying is, our culture that we live in, our context that we live in, impose on us what he called identity formation process that shape our identity without asking our permission. So whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, your school, your environment, the people around you, your colleagues, all of that, the culture around you, shape your identity. And that is scary, isn't it? So it shows how important the context that we are in, the culture that we are in, because it shapes our identity. Imagine you're in a horrible culture, and that is shaping you. So whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, our culture is shaping us and imposing on us our identity. Okay? So it's important to recognize this, and we want to explore this tonight, because understanding what the culture is doing to us will help us be aware of what is being imposed on us. Because when I ask, who are you? After you say your name, some of those answers that you give is due to what the culture has been indoctrinated on your life. I've been telling you, whether directly or indirectly. So we're going to look at a few things tonight. What is identity, and what is traditional identities, and what is modern identity. And also we're going to look at the problems with modern identity. With most of us young people would have a mix of traditional, especially if you're from an Asian background, you know, Eastern culture, you probably have more traditional identity. But if you grew up in a kind of Western, fully Westernized culture, you would have a more modern identity influence. Today, we're going to look at the problems with those things. And then the solution, which is going to be just really quick. That is the gospel identity that are going to be explored next week. So what is an identity? Well, an identity is who you are and what gives your life meaning. In other words, your sense of self and your sense of worth. That's identity. So who you are and what gives your life meaning. Your sense of self and sense of worth, that's your identity. So in other words, your core trust, your source of value, and your recognition in your life. So core trust is this. Core trust is what you trust that is define who you are, that is fundamental in your life, that is identical regardless of your roles. So your core trust is the same whether you are a teacher, if you are a teacher, when you're working outside, or if you are a manager or you're a pastor, or when you are at home as a father or as a husband. Your core trust does not change. So your core trust cannot be your job. Because as soon as you come home, you know, when I was in Sydney, I was a head of technology, a technical director. People look up to me when I speak, people listen to me. When I get home and speak to my wife, totally different. You see? So core trust is who you are that does not change regardless of your roles in your life. So that's your core trust. And another one is your source of value. Identity is also your source of value and recognition. Who gets to say that you're valuable and that you are actually achieving or realizing your purpose in life? So in your life, right? Think about this. Who gets to say that you are valuable and that you are doing well in your purpose in life? Who gets to say that? And that defines who you are. It is a big and kind of complex question that all of us embrace, but a lot of us without much thinking about it. And we should. As a Christian, we should. Even as a non-Christian, we should. Because the culture is imposing its belief on us. Don't you want to know what it's doing to us, to our life, to your identity? So your identity is whatever you look to for your security, for your trust, and for your significance, for your worth. That's your identity. So that's kind of very mouthful, very theoretical. So we're going to get into kind of examples and make it more concrete from here on. So what is modern identity? We're living in a culture where it's predominantly in the Western culture that is modern identity. But if you're coming from a rich, thick Asian background or Eastern culture, you might have still traditional identity influence in your life. So before we look at modern identity, obviously we need, for us to fully understand, we need to look at what is traditional identity. Before we get to modern, what was before modern, right? What was identity before modern? What is traditional identity? Well, in ancient times, the highest good in life was honor. Okay? So in ancient time, the highest good was honor. That is, sacrificing your own happiness. You don't even bother about your own happiness for the good of the family, or for the good of the clan, or for the good of the tribe, or for the good of the society. So in ancient times, in traditional identity, Forget about your own happiness. That's not your goal, right? It's all about honor, and you gain honor by sacrificing what you want, your own happiness, for the sake of the family, for the sake of the clan or the society that you live in. So for man, right, man's honor would be to go to war, to go to battle, and die for your tribe. If you die, then that's big honor. That's identity. And for women, their honor would be what? To have lots of kids. The more kids, the more honor. And both of them are dangerous, right? Back in, these days, because of medical advancement, giving birth it's a lot safer. But not back then in ancient times. Getting pregnant, giving birth, it's dangerous. It's life-threatening. So in ancient time, the highest good was honor. So you're a good person if you sacrifice for your family. So that's traditional identity. So you're not thinking what's good for you. If you're living with this traditional identity, you're not thinking about what's good for you, your own happiness, but the good of others, of the society, of your family, of the clan. You don't take a job just because you like it or you want it, but you take a job that what your parents want for you. You're not marrying the person you love and you want. You're marrying someone that your parents want you to marry. That's traditional identity, traditional view of identity. So in other words, you suppresses what's inside of you in favor of external. So the external, it's kind of very heavy influence on you in a traditional identity. The decisive validator, the one who gets to say that you're doing a good job, that bestow honor on you, is external in this case. So you cannot say that you're good. Your parents can. You're a good son because you do the job that I asked you to do. You marry the person I asked you to marry. So the validator is your parents, external. You cannot say you're good. Your parents can't say you're good. Your society can say, your clan can bestow honor on you because you die, you sacrifice your life in battle for the good of the tribe. So that's traditional. Now what's modern? Well, modern is not, you don't jump from that to modern today. There's actually 3 stages of kind of progression to modern identity that we should look at. So the first stage is about 1600s. In the 1600s, early modern thinkers believe in moral absolute still. Like there's still external good. There's external moral grid, moral standard that is good, that we should follow. The good is outside of us, but we have to align ourselves inside to meet that good. Right? So it's sort of still kind of the culture, the family, or the clan saying this is what being good means. And then we go inside and look inside how we can align so that we can be good. Okay, so that's very early stage. You don't ask people to find the moral goods. You look inside, but then you align with the external validation. And the main difference with traditional is that you are the decisive validator to say that you are good. Because you say, well, I followed that, I've done that. So you don't let people tell you that you're good. You say, I'm good because I align with that. Okay? Then it move on to the way you are finding out about moral absolute is with your own reasoning. So that progressing to become your own reasoning now. You don't look at what the external moral goods. You look at, okay, what is good, right? Look in their own reasoning. You go deep down into your heart to search for that. So it's sort of going to a second stage. This is up to 1700s, 1800s, right? So this is our culture. What is good? What is a good citizen? Back then is this in a Western culture. They believe human beings are basically good, but you got to find out how to live with your own intuition. The good is still outside and external, but you go deep inside to determine what it is. You don't let people tell you what it is. You go into your own heart, into your own intuition, and tell you what that is, to define who you are. And then we live in the 20th century, and so on, in the third stage of modernity, modern identity. Basically, today, Western modern identity basically says this: there are no moral absolute out there. Okay, all moral absolutes are either socially constructed by culture or the product of evolution to help our ancestors survive. So modern identity says there's no moral absolutes out there. So what it means is there's nothing good outside. Okay, there's nothing good outside. Moral absolute or moral absolutes that you need to connect, to align with, right? If it's just like a school, right? If the teacher say if you do this, then you get an A. There's no longer outside that say you need to do this to get an A anymore in modern identity that you need to connect with. You basically decide what is right and wrong for yourself in modern identity, or what is good for you, really. What is good for your family, and then ultimately what is good for yourself. You don't look to anybody to validate you. You don't look to your parents to say, well, you done well. No, you look to, I've done well. I don't care what you say. The name comes up because I've got the quote. That person is Charles Taylor. Okay, so he wrote really, really hard books. I mean, I read books written about his book. So those are the people I've read, because his books are just too hard. But I think his books on our secular age, it's very good, but it's about 800 pages and it's so difficult to read. So I read a book about the book. Still very hard to read, but it's a lot easier. So Charles Taylor says this: modern identity says if you want to sacrifice for a cause, go for it, but it's not because the cause is objectively good and that you must sacrifice for it. The cause that you are sacrificed for is good because you choose it. You see that? He said, yes, by all means, modern identity, go for a cause, go to Africa, go on a mission trip and serve the community in Africa. But it's not because there's a external moral good in that. It's good because you believe it's good. Because you choose to do so. Okay? So let me summarize that between the move from traditional to modern. Traditional is pretty much outwardly influenced, isn't it? You look to outward group of people to validate who you are. And in a modern identity, you look inside. I believe this is for me, this is good, then I'm good, then I'm cool, right? So you submit your happiness, you decide what is right and wrong, instead of you submit your happiness to your parents. Your parents say, you should become a doctor. And then you just submit to that, and that's your happiness, that's your joy. You're giving honor to your parents by doing that. Your parents say you should marry A, not B. And you do that even though you love B more. So we're moving from outward validation to inward validation. And then traditional view is about duties, and modern identity is more about desires. What you like, what you desire, what is your passion. It's no longer about duties. So in traditional view, identity, you get your identity by being a person of honor, by suppressing your inner desires, and that's your duty for your family, or for your clan, or for your society, or for your culture. That's in traditional. But in modern, in modern identity, you get your identity by going inside, find the desires, what you want to be, and you come out and demanding recognition from everyone else around you. See the transition there from duties to desires? So basically, you go from going outside for moral absolutes, and then you go inside and tell yourself, this is how I must live. right? Your parents say, you must do this, and you go and say, okay, this is how I must live my life. This is my identity. Moving to a modern identity that says, well, I don't go outside. I don't look for my parents or my culture, my society to tell me what it is. I go inside, find what I want to be, who I want to be, and I can go outside and tell, well, this is who I am. You got to accept me. This is me. Whether you like it or not, you better accept me. That's modern identity. So at this stage, some of you might have kind of skewed towards, okay, I'm more like this, or I'm more like this. It's a bit difficult if you are an Asian living in Melbourne, because there's a clash of cultures and identities here. So what's the problem with? Let me go quickly at the problems with modern identity. Let me tell you, none of them are right, whether it's traditional identity or modern. None of them are right in the sense that will satisfy us as God creation. None of them, right? So, but let me tell you the problems with modern identity. The first one is incoherent. There's 6 lists that I get from Tim Keller. He said the first one is incoherent. What does it mean? Well, no one has the right to tell you, basically incoherent, like you say, no one has the right to tell me right or wrong. I have to go into my own feelings, what is right and wrong, right? Well, your feelings are full of contradiction, our feelings full of contradiction. We can feel A this morning, we can feel totally the opposite. We can feel B the next day, right? So if you look to your feelings to define who you are, then you're going to change, right? You're going to be confused. That's why we love one thing 1 minute and another thing the next. So modern identity is incoherent. The second one is fragile. In traditional identity, at least you got an external validator, like a society, a clan, that probably don't change as quickly as your own feeling. So it's quite fragile. If in modern identity, you basically you are the decisive validator to say who you are and whether you're achieving your purpose in life or not. You are the sole validator, you know. So and what end up is you never be satisfied in your life in modern identity because you are the sole validator and you are, by nature, we are fragile being, and it's crushing. See, traditional identity is about fitting in, you see. If you are in traditional society, in a traditional identity society, it's about how can I fit in. In Melbourne, it's not about how can I fit in. It's not how can I stand out. You see? It's crushing because if it's about standing out, imagine what kind of pressure that puts on you as a person. Because it's not about fitting in. It's not about, oh, this is good, I'm going to be going with the flow, I'm going to be part of this. No, modern identity says you got to be who you are. You got to stand out. And that is crushing because it put a lot of pressure on us. And the fourth one is fragmenting. What it means is this, like, you know, traditional identity, it's about community, about family, about community. But in modern identity, it's about what? Me, myself, and I. It's very individualistic. It's very fragmenting because, like, in marriage, for example, if your spouse no longer serves what you need and does not make you happy anymore, what would you do? You walk out. Because it's not about the family. It's about my happiness. So when things don't work out anymore, when your spouse does not perform as your spouse is supposed to be, according to whom? According to yourself, then that's it. I don't want any of this anymore. And in church, if your church no longer fits your need, see, in a traditional view, you fitting in a church, say, okay, what is the vision of the church? Okay, I'm on board with that. Let's do it, regardless of whether I'm happy there or not, because this is for a greater, bigger cause than me. I'm all in. But in a modern identity, and this is why we're seeing people jumping churches, right? Churches become very much consumerism oriented, entertainment oriented, is because of modern identity that has crept in. It's like when my church is no longer fitting my lifestyle, now I got kids. The church I go to did not have a really good children program. Does not fit my need anymore. I'm going to be out of here. It's very fragmenting. And then community, about community works and all this stuff. Well, we say, well, it doesn't fit my agenda. My calendar, like, you know, I got gym, I got these, it doesn't fit me, even though it's for the greater good of my complex, my community complex. You know, we're gonna chip in, we're gonna do a cleaning up on Sunday with the whole neighborhood. Well, because it doesn't fit my need, my schedule, I don't want to be part of that. And it's fragmenting, and that's modern identity. No one tells you what you should do anymore. It's not about fitting in. So you never sacrifice, the idea of modern identity is you never sacrifice your own happiness for the greater good. Never. If it does not make you happy, if it does not satisfy you, you don't do it. And the fifth one is exclusive. Modern identity is exclusive because it's competitive, because you got to stand out. This is the pressure that the world, the culture that we live in is putting on you. You got to stand out. And because of that, you become competitive. And because you're competitive, you become exclusive in the sense that you got to be better than the others. Somehow you will feel threatened in something that you, let's say, you look inside, okay, this is what is good, what is the purpose of my life. And as soon as you find that and you see someone else is better at that than you feel threatened. Because you feel like a loser. What it means then, if you believe in wealth, as you know, wealth is the greater good. If I have wealth, then I've achieved my purpose in life. If that's you, what it means is then you despise those who are poor. It's like, well, greater good in life is you have a job, you are wealthy, you have a house, you have a car. And for those who don't have, you would look down on them. Right? If someone who's believe in hard work, like, okay, the greater good in your modern identity is hard work. It's about hard work, man. Like, I don't care whether you have much or not, but you work hard. As soon as that become your core trust, then what happens is that you're going to start looking down on those who don't work very hard. It's like, look at those people, man. They're so lazy. Start looking down on them. Okay? In other words, you basically say, I'm great because I'm not like them. I'm good because I'm not like them. Okay? You find who you are by demonizing everyone else who is not like you. That's modern identity. And Christians are being attacked because of this. Okay? Because you don't believe what I believe, right? You're a bigot. Automatically. That's modern identity. Okay? And if we have this, then we would be similar in a different way. Okay? So we become exclusive. And number 6 is illusion. Modern identity is an illusion. The idea that you can decide what is right and wrong by looking inwardly is not true. We think it's right, but it's not. It's an illusion. Why is it an illusion? Well, imagine this. This is an example that I find really helpful. Just 20 years, go back 200 years ago. If a woman has a choice between so she has to make a choice, either one of them, between marrying a really good man or choosing a really good career, 200 years ago, what would she choose? A really good man, and have a family and have kids. Lots of kids. End of story, right? But today, same situation, what would happen? People would say, well, come on, choose the career. Forget about man. Right? Why is it so different? Because you cannot go deep inside you and find the true you because your culture shaped you. Depends on where you live. Not even 200 years ago. If you are in Melbourne today, you would decide this if you say you live in, In Iran, for example, if you're an Iranian, grew up in there, you probably choose different thing. But you look deep inside of you, the same way, you're still you, but somehow your culture, your context influence that. So it's not really, it's like that's me. I search inside of me and that's what makes me happy. That's not true. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. So 6 things, right? So where do you get that value from then, right? So not from inside of you, right? Because if you truly look and get the value from inside of you, regardless whether that woman lived 200 years ago or today, you would choose the same, regardless. But because that woman choose not really from inside of her, but something that has influenced her and shaped her. This is what the transformation that's happening in her life. So another example, say it's a man. Instead of woman, say it's a man. Say 1,000 years ago instead of 200 years ago. 1,000 years ago, you were on your shorts, bare-chested, walking down the street, and then you have this urge, aggression, kind of, violent urge, like, man, this is good. I'm gonna go to battle and kill people, right? I'm gonna start killing people. This is me. I'm a man. Probably fine. But then if that man have this kind of 1,000 years ago have sexual desire that is not quite right, it's like no, that's not me. That's not me. I'm not like that. I just should go out and start killing people. But if the same man live in today, right? If you feel like there's an aggression, a violence inside of you, what you do? You don't go say, oh, I'm just going to go out there and start killing people. You say, well, I need to see a therapist. Something's wrong with me, right? But if that man have this kind of strange sexual desires, like, well, that's me. That's what God made me. You can't change me. That's who I am, right? Same desires. Somehow in different time, you would respond differently because the culture shape you, whether you like it or not. A lot of times the danger is we don't realize what the culture around us is shaping and telling us, this is what you should like, this is what you should be. And we believe, oh yeah, I should be like that. The culture is telling us, well, to be successful, you got to graduate well from school, get a good job, get married, have kids, have mortgage, pay off your mortgage, have a car, have a good retirement fund, and die happy. I wonder how much of that it's actually true. How much of what we do every day, that we strive for every day to find happiness and purpose in our life, is actually true, not because of the culture that is shaping us and transforming us in their own way. See, the culture that we're living in is very clever. They don't give you a bullet points. They don't give you a pamphlet, say, this is how you should live your life, brother. They don't give you a pamphlet to say, you must do this and that. They don't. They shape through culture, through art, through movies, through play, through everything. Like, if someone say, like a lot of people say, all modern movies basically have the same plot, like the same framework to make us like, wow, that's a good movie. It's just different characters, slightly different stories, but the plot, it's pretty much the same. That is basically glorifying modern identities, modern traditions, modern identities. Let me give you an example from a movie, kids movie called Frozen. We've seen that. Have you seen that, Frozen? The Disney movie, and there's this Queen Elsa, that can freeze stuff. You know what I'm talking about, right? Just just nod your head if you know what I'm talking about. Frozen, and this popular song called Let It Go. Let it go, let it go, right? Yeah. So in the song Let It Go, Elsa sang about the traditional identity that is being imposed on her. And she says this, be the good girl you always have to be. This is what being imposed on her. conceal and don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. So she just say, this is what the traditional identities that have been imposed on me, and telling me to conceal it, my own desires. But now I'm gonna tell them what I feel. And she continued. Then she moves on to a modern identity. And she said, well, let it go instead of concealing. So I'm gonna let it go. You know, I can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Sounds familiar? Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. And then she said, it's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. You see what she's doing there? The song's doing is like, well, traditional views telling me I have to do this and I have to conceal what I want. But to her, well, that's not freedom. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to be whoever I want to be. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm free. But what we see today is, really, it's not. She's not free. That song will not make sense 1,000 years ago. It makes sense now because of the culture that we live in. So all good movies is basically glorifying this. Like, you know, oh, your parents tried, the culture tried to impose you, limit you, and you say, I don't want to be like that. I want to be different. I want to be who I am. I want to be myself. So what I try to highlight here is neither traditional identities or modern identities is right, because they're fragile. They change. They're fragmenting. You see, modern culture is basically telling us this: be true to yourself. That sounds good, isn't it? Be true to yourself. But you see, if you are true to yourself, then you will end up a complete mess. Let me say that again. The culture is telling us today, be true to yourself. But if you are truly be true to yourself, you will end up a complete mess in your life. Because yourself, being true to yourself, will change today, will change tomorrow from today. And from 3 months from now will change. From a year from now will change. From 3 years from now will change. So what? You're going to keep changing that way? If you're married, you say, well, this is the one for me. When it doesn't suit your purpose, I don't know what you're going to say. In modern cultures, I'm going to be free. You don't tell me. I can't do that. I can do whatever I want to do. I can marry whoever I want to marry. And you're married, say, well, married, it's a covenant between man and woman. Well, who are you to tell me that? I can do whatever I want to do. You'll end up a complete mess. So there's a much better identity. So I'm going to live with that. There is a much better identity that is not fragile, that is not exclusive, that is not crushing, that's not putting pressure on us, that is not changing. And that identity is the gospel identity. And that's what we're going to look at next week. What is the gospel identity? So there's traditional identity, there's a modern identity, and there's a gospel identity. So a gospel-shaped life should be gospel identity for us. So we don't let the culture shape us and tell us who we are. Even though modern identity don't recognize it, but I've just shown you that actually in modern identity, the culture shape us, without whether you're realizing or not. Okay? Because if you've been living in somewhere else, other parts of the world, you would do differently. Right? So if what inside of you is truly who you are, then it will not change you. Whether you are here or whether you're in Africa. Whether you live today or whether you live 500 years ago will not change you. What you're aiming, what your purpose in life will not change. What you go for in your life, what is the ultimate good in your life, what gives your life purpose and meaning will not change. If it changes, then it's fragile. So let me close with this. Let God shape you instead of the culture, shapes you and tell you who you are. All right? So if you want a stable and full and satisfying sense of self, identity, then the decisive validator in your life can neither be your own or external, as in your parents or your culture or your society. Tim Keller says this: to be a Christian then is to let the gospel short circuit the modern identity formation in your life. So how can you be a Christian? You become a Christian. Once you become a Christian, you live a Christian life by letting the gospel short circuit what the culture is trying to do in your life. So we live in a culture that tries to shape us, to form us in a certain way. Through movies, through books, right? Through blog posts, through politicians, through policies. But if you want to live a Christian life, you let the gospel influence your life. Short circuit what the culture is trying to form in your life. So only as you stop allowing yourself to be pulled into modern identity and more live into and out of your identity in Christ, and only as you do that, you can actually become more like Christ. So how can we become mature and to be more like Christ? We let the gospel speak into our life. Don't let the culture speak into our life. Let the gospel short circuit the formation that the society tried to shape us. The Apostle Paul says this, I'm going to close with this. In Ephesians 4:20-24, the Apostle Paul says this: put off your old self. He's saying this to Christians. Put off your old self and put on the new self. And that's what we should do. There's always old self in us that we need to constantly putting off as we're putting on the new self, the gospel into our life. This is the theological term for this is called sanctification. How do you sanctify yourself to be more like Christ? You put on the gospel. Let the gospel influence your life and shape your life. So that's what we're going to explore next week. Let's close our eyes.